A lot of role-playing game sites and blogs and the like have been talking about games that you can play on your own or online during these testing times of isolation. And I thought, where better to look than last year's 200 word RPG challenge, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a huge fan of the 200 word RPG challenge. And I read all of the games in last year's challenge. I didn't review them all, I learnt my lesson there. But I'd like to go through some of them with you at the moment. Now, these games aren't necessarily some of the best in the competition, but they are appropriate for people who need to play solo or for people who want to play online. Let's get right into our first one. The very first, if you have a look at the website here, you'll see that there's many games. And the very first one there is hashtag Tween Heist, a dystopian social media RPG by at Roland Kunz. I'm not sure if that's a birth name or not. They have a content warning for social media and tweens, not necessarily two of my triggers, but they may be yours. So some of these games do have content warnings. I'll try to treat them with respect. And this game can be played on Twitter. In fact, it's meant to be played on Twitter. Even the way you design your character is done in a tweet. And you go and do tween-style adventures taking on the dystopian state. And it all uses Twitter. And I had a look at the hashtag. There's a couple of games so far, but I'm sure the designer would like to see more. That's hashtag Tween Heist, a dystopian social media RPG. Next up, a game that you can play also online. By the way, hashtag Tween Heist was a finalist last year. Not a winner, but a finalist. And so is Words Over the Airwaves by PackBat. Content warning: gameplay could potentially induce anxiety. And in Words Over the Airwaves, you and your friends will be engaging with a crisis. So you're assigned, every one of you are scientists in isolated areas, and there's a problem, and you've got to communicate with each other about how you're going to solve the problem. And occasionally there'll be a disaster, and no one will be able to communicate with anyone, or someone will just be delayed. The transmission just doesn't go through, and there's a consequence. So an interesting game for multiple people, Words Over the Airwaves. You can also play it online. Next up is Dear Friend, which is a game that you shouldn't play online. You're meant to do it with snail mail. This is Murray Sampson's game, Dear Friend. For two players, using letters, and each letter will follow a theme: home, hope, love, hate, and so forth. And also the resolution mechanic, and this is quite interesting. You'll roll a die and compare it to the date stamp. And if they're both even or both odd, that determines whether there's a positive or negative consequence there. Very interesting little game, not a finalist. Dear Friend, ellipses. By Murray Sampson. Give it a look if you're interested in writing some letters. Everyone likes to receive a letter in the mail. Another two-player game is Rendezvous, another written game by Kalen Doyle Myeskoff and Andrew Tran. So it's a game for two players and written by two designers, with a content warning for heartache, and it's emotionally heavy. To be played by two people apart who miss each other. You once shared intimacy but haven't met in some time. Roll or decide. So you roll or decide. You randomly choose or decide various aspects about the relationship. You every time someone discusses something describes something in the area that reminds you of something about the relationship, you segue into it, and in the end, you end up deciding whether you're going to meet again or stay together or separate forever. Interesting. Actually, I think the end game is a little bit unclear, but Rendezvous was a finalist in last year's competition. Quite a lot of finalists here at the start. So well done there to Rendezvous. Give it a whirl. Two-player storytelling game. And then We Were No More is our next game by Dave Lehman. Could be Lehman, or Lehman. Death of a People is the content warning. And yes, that's what it's about. Effectively, in this game, it's a kind of a reverse microscope dynamic. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, so you'll each be telling a story in small chapters, in small bites and scenes. But in this one, you do it in reverse. You start with the ending. You always start with the ending. And then We Were No More is the final index card. So it's another writing game. Now, I just want to make a note. Some people have said to me that they don't think writing games are particularly role-playing games, and I disagree. In fact, there's a whole scene of people who do collaborative writing as role-playing games, and I think that's just as valid as anything else. So there we are. That's and then We Were No More. Next up is a game that you can play on your own, and I chose this one for a little bit of fun. Wasn't a finalist. It's called Undecipherable, which is ironic, as it is decipherable. This is by S. Pines, and as you can see, it says once you've deciphered the rules, then you will understand how to play the game, and then we just have what seems to be gibberish. But it is a code, not a particularly complex code. You should be able to work it out. But in the author comments, there's some clues to help you decrypt it if you need to. So Undecipherable is a game that it took me maybe about 10 minutes to decipher the code. I'm not particularly a great code cracker or anything like that, but I do enjoy the occasional code. And if you like codes, you can work this out. Maybe you won't play the game afterwards, but you can at least spend some time cracking a code and having some fun there. Undecipherable. Another game you can play on your own is Best Friend Spruce by Jay Treat, with content warnings for self-destructive behaviour, being ignored, and watching a loved one struggle. A very interesting concept, this one. You play as a tree, and your best friend is a human who comes out. Her name's Jenny. She has a name in this, and she comes in and tells you her problems, and you listen to them and try to give her advice and comfort her. And the format the system takes here is to jump onto a website somewhere. It gives an option, some kind of agony aunt system, and see if someone's got a problem. Whatever that question is, that's the question Jenny's asking, and she ends up doing whatever the first person to respond to that online tells her to do. Like, tells that person. You interpret that to say she does that, and it all ends up badly. It always ends up very badly. And so you tell the story of Jenny and the tree, and it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. Again, this is another solo writing style of game. Not for everyone, but I think it's very worthwhile. Alone is another writing game by Steffi Devan, with a content warning for solitude. And yes, Alone is an immersive narrative game for either one solo player or 2+ people. You wake up and everyone is gone, even the internet, which still exists, but it seems devoid of people. And you make diary entries in this game about basically a last soul survivor. And each day, over the course of several days, you make diary entries, and there's actually a list of things that you write about each day. And you can end up exchanging diaries with other people if you want. So that's Alone. Last Goodbye, with a content warning for infection, disease, and death, is by Daniela Antonio Barbaglia. And Last Goodbye is a game about it's got a great opening. You've been infected, and in a few hours you could either turn into something or die. And effectively, you're meant to put yourself into this mindset, and then write down your last will and testament. But not just your last will and testament, but your last thoughts, what's going through your mind, your experiences. And as you start to deteriorate, you start losing the ability to use punctuation, the ability to use nouns or verbs, until eventually there's whatever you're able to put down are your last words. A very interesting idea. Last Goodbye could make a great little short story if you're a writer type. The next game is one of my favourites, and I think it's a shame that it didn't become a finalist, because I think Six Commands by Caro is an excellent little game, and very well presented as well. In Six Commands, you make 6 laws as if you're a god. There's been a lot of games in the contest over the last few years about playing as gods or pantheons. I myself designed one. But you make 6 laws in numerical order, and then you randomly assign them to 6 different things that the people you gave them to, your people, have done with them. One of them they follow to a fault. Another one they don't follow it. Another one is used for corruption. Another one is the salvation of your children. and you tell that story. And wonderfully, they've also not only that to help you tell the story, like how the people use them each, but also there's these wonderful themes to each of the stories you tell too. So like one of them's just a dog, the dog. You know, how do you use one of those other, the law you've made and how people are treated, along with the theme of the dog. Excellent way to help you tell stories, and beautifully presented. 6 commands by Caro. I think it's up in the top 10. Personally, I think it's in the top 10% of the games that were submitted last year. Moving along is The Love-Stained Wisdom King by Sangjun, with a content warning for lust. Oh, doesn't that sound juicy? And this game is more of a meditation. Play as you read. Imagine someone most perfectly worthy of your lust. Burn in your desire for them. Feel this pain, which is real. And this game is effectively about reading the instructions and following them to meditate on the idea of lust and spirituality, I guess. Another writing game is Lighthouse by Wingle Bear, where you are a person isolated in a lighthouse, and every time something problematic occurs, you roll a die. And if you ever roll the same number again, then the same twist occurs. The same problem is reoccurring somehow, until eventually there's only one spot left in your list, or on the die, as it were, and which is the final one, which is the lighthouse itself. So there's Lighthouse, another possibility for a solo writing game. Next up is another finalist, and a doozy. This is a really good game. Unfortunately, probably only about 3 people in the world will ever play it. It's The Waiting Room. Your Partner is in Surgery by Natalie Ash. It's very, very good. It's for 1 player, and it takes 3 to 10 hours. And effectively, you put yourself in the mindset of someone who's in a cool, uncomfortable corridor, traumatically waiting for word on someone you love who's in a hospital bed, who's very sick, and to find out whether they're okay or not. And you write things to them, you write things about them, whether you're upset with them or whether you're happy with them. And at different times you write different things, and you destroy them at different times as well. And you very well could come out of this 10-hour experience with nothing to show for it apart from your experiences. It's quite possible. Now, if you are someone who plays this game, let me know your experiences, because I think there's very few people that would really get into this game, but it's an excellent idea for a writer's retreat. And another game we've got here, Dappled History by Uli. And this is a drawing game. You draw things on a map and you tell stories about them. You could even play it online if you want to. So, those are a whole bunch of games that you can play from last year's competition. Go to the website, 200wordrpg.github.io, and you'll be able to find it. There's a lot of games there. I'll also mention 2 others from last year. I'll let you make up your own mind about them. One of them is called Crimson by Jeon Shim, which is an interesting game about being a homunculus. But yeah, it's kind of, you'll need a bandage for it. Be careful. And the other one is Shit, the World is Ending, which has a very long content warning, and don't hurt yourself for any game. Don't just make that point. So there, a whole heap of different games that you can try out. Thank you very much. Let me know if you've tried any of them at all. Happy gaming.